All right, welcome everyone to our second Strong Youth Project interview that we're doing. My name is Jordan Searle. I'm one of the students that's working on the Strong Youth Project with Dr. Seeley, and we're excited to be here. We're glad that you're listening in, and we don't have a guest today, but we're actually going to interview and talk with Dr. Seeley about why he wanted to start the Strong Youth Project, and I'm pretty excited for it. I think he has a lot of good reasons for starting it and a lot of good hopes and aspirations for this project. So we'll let Dr. Seeley introduce himself.
Thanks, Jordan. I appreciate you being here. My name is Matt Seeley, and I'm a full professor at Brigham Young University. I'm in the Department of Exercise Sciences. My educational background is in exercise science with biomechanics as an emphasis. Well, in a different life, I was a certified athletic trainer, and I practiced as a few years in that regard. Have a chance to see a lot of different athletes as an athletic trainer. I think it was mostly fall football practices that convinced me that I wanted to go into higher education. Those of you who are familiar with athletic training know that athletic trainers work a lot of hours, especially during certain parts of the year. I wanted to be more with my family, so I pursued a degree in higher education and research. So I went and got a PhD in exercise sciences with an emphasis in biomechanics. And for the last 10 or 15 years, I've studied the effects of physical activity on knee articular cartilage health. I'm trying to learn more about how physical activity and exercise can benefit knee cartilage. All the while, I've been raising a family. I have five kids. The oldest is 20 and the youngest is 8. And all of them, to one degree or another, have been involved in youth sports. And I've watched a lot of sporting events. I've coached a lot of sporting events. I've participated in a lot of sporting events. So, and I have a strong belief that youth sports can be really good for kids if done the right way.
Yeah, great. I think it's awesome how much experience you have in coaching, having your own kids, also in your PhD. I think that's also great. And I've seen it just from the last 6 months working with you, all the just stuff that we've been able to do and all the experience that you have, I think is great for the Strong Youth Project. And what we introduced the Strong Youth Project for people that don't know much about it, or
you bet. So my motivation for beginning the Strong Youth Project, I first want to say it was strictly personal. At first, as I raised my kids, again, I saw lots and lots of benefits for kids in youth sport, but I saw some other things that I didn't particularly care for. I watched, for example, I have a son who plays a lot of soccer. He's played on a club soccer team for a number of years now. He's had tremendous coaching. I love his soccer coaches a lot, and he's learned a lot, and he's benefited a ton from his experience playing soccer. But there were parts of the experience that surprised me, especially when I compared those experiences with my own sporting experiences. Youth sports these days is so expensive. I'm a cheapskate at heart, and I really was surprised by the cost of youth sports these days, and it continues to increase. And so much that I think it's now excluding a lot of kids from participating in sport because it's so expensive. I didn't like the early sports specialization idea. Not necessarily from his primary coaches, but just the culture of youth sports these days was pressuring my son to play soccer year round. He was having to decide whether he wanted to play soccer or basketball, for example, which is another sport he loved. And that flies in the face of my experience, and it runs counter to the scientific data that show that participation in multiple sports is really good for kids, and sport specialization is a bad idea. I was disappointed by the displays of poor sportsmanship that I saw in youth sports, and I want to be quick and say I was guilty of it at times. I still am guilty of it at times. I'm a competitive guy. I love to compete, and I left youth sporting events disappointed in myself at times for the poor sportsmanship that I showed. And so I've been thinking a lot about youth sports, and I thought, yeah, there's got to be a better way. Can we turn this ship around and make the youth sporting experience the best possible experience that that can be had for kids? And so I started thinking about how I might be able to help. And this idea of the Strong Youth Project began to formulate in my mind. At the same time, here at BYU, I was looking for ways to mentor more undergraduate students. One of our charges here at BYU as faculty is to mentor as many undergraduate students outside of the classroom as possible. And so I started to think of a project that I might be able to begin that would allow me to improve the youth sport experience for kids, parents, coaches, as well as mentor a bunch of really sharp undergraduate students at BYU. And so this idea of the Strong Youth Project began to emerge. About a year ago, I got together with a dozen or so undergraduate students and a good friend of mine, Justin Yee, who's a soccer coach, and we started talking about starting the Strong Youth Project. And so about a year ago, well, it was last fall semester, we began meeting weekly as students and an advisory team. I started to gather an advisory team full of fellow colleagues, most of whom are here at BYU. They have an interest in youth sports. I've got people like strength and conditioning coaches, a physical therapist, sports psychologist, developmental psychologist, a statistician. I just started to try and assemble a team of people who are bright and equally committed to improving youth sports, so that we could start to tackle some of the difficulties that I described earlier that are associated with youth sport. So 1 year later, we've got a name, we've got a logo, we're starting to create content. We've got an advisory team. We've got a team of committed undergraduate students. And I think we're starting to make progress on this huge goal of improving youth sport for kids and parents, families. We got a mission, we got some aims. Our mission is to improve the youth sport experience for all the stakeholders in youth sports. We have three aims. The first is to communicate scientific-based evidence to the youth sports stakeholders. I'm a scientist at heart, and it really bugs me when I hear misinformation spread in the sporting community. I don't think it's ever done purposefully, but again, the first aim is to communicate scientific evidence. Second aim is to produce scientific information. So we'll talk about this a little bit later, I hope, but we're continuing to conduct scientific research that can improve the youth sport experience for kids. And then the third aim that we'd like to accomplish with the Strong Youth Project is to give my students here at BYU an opportunity to coach and to train youth athletes in the real world. So I kind of rambled. Did I answer your question, Jordan?
That was perfect. You gave the whole overview of the Strong Youth Project, and I loved kind of the specifics about the first aim with scientific information. On our last interview that we did with Jake Sorensen, he talked a lot about resistance training and strength training. And I think even for me, watching that interview, I was thinking, oh, maybe I don't know what resistance training is. He talked about, I was thinking just free weights the whole time, but he talked about using bands. He talked about different drills. And that was just one of the things that for me, even then I thought I knew a little bit about youth sports and all of this exercise science stuff that we're studying. I thought I knew a little bit about it, and then I watched that and I thought, oh man, maybe there's a lot of myths that I need to hear from this advisory board and from professionals. And that's really what we're trying to do, I think, with the Strong Youth Project, is just make sure that information's out there and make sure that kids are having fun playing sports, that they're doing it the right way in a healthy way. And I think that's great.
I'll tell you a quick story, Jordan. I was at a soccer game last night. I was thinking about this interview, wondering what I might say today. And so I showed up to my son's soccer game a few minutes early, and I sat underneath a tree. It was 94 degrees. I was trying to stay cool, and I watched the soccer game finish. And then I watched the coach gather his team around out in the sunshine after the game. And I sat just far enough away that I wasn't noticed, but I could hear what the coach was saying. And he was giving him a lecture on cramping. Apparently, this team had a few players go down with cramps towards the end of the game. And so here the coach is. He's got his player. I'm sure this coach means well. I'm sure he loves his kids. I have no doubt. But he's got his kids out in the sunshine, 94 degrees, out in the sun. He's got them gathered around. He's talking about stretching, and he says, "All right, we got to stretch." He gets them in a stretching circle, and he says, "If we don't stretch right now, we're going to cramp up tomorrow, and we're never going to win our game tomorrow." And I'm sitting over there thinking, the scientific evidence, it would indicate that cramping has nothing to do with stretching. What the coach should have been doing was talking about nutrition and electrolyte balance. And he should have had them in the shade resting rather than out in the sun. And so, I mean, you mentioned strength training and resistance training. There's a lot of misinformation about that. I was thinking about cramping and stretching last night. And I think if that coach had better information, he would happily pass that along to his players. So
Yeah. Well, that's what I love, if he had better information, because I would doubt that there's many coaches that are purposefully misinforming their athletes, or parents that are misinforming their children that of things that are wrong, things that they shouldn't be doing. And I think that's the key, is that they need the correct information. Then they're happy to do it once they have the correct information. And I think giving that to people through the Strong Youth Project, and kind of bite-sized nuggets, ways that they can understand it, because reading the scientific papers can be difficult, especially for if you've never done it before. And so I think that's a great way of giving it to people, is just ways that they can understand it and ways that they can apply it.
I totally agree, Jordan. I don't know of a parent who would purposefully mislead his child in a detrimental way. Yeah, we have a bunch of parents out there right now who are promoting this early sports specialization idea. They say, if you want to be a collegiate basketball player, you got to play basketball year round, when the data indicate that that's the best way to physically injure your child and to promote psychological burnout. And that's not a great way to become well, first of all, it's not a great way to become a happy child. And second, it's not the best way to become an elite basketball player either. So I think if the parents knew what the data indicated, they wouldn't be promoting early sports specialization. So I totally agree. Just one more example.
No, that's perfect. And so we want to change that through the Strong Youth Project. How do you see the Strong Youth Project changing that? What are the goals for it, long-term and short-term, and the overall change that it can bring?
Yeah. So again, aim one, I'll read it right from my cheat sheet here, is to communicate scientific evidence to all youth sport stakeholders, including athletes, regarding factors that affect the quality of youth sport experiences. So what we're trying to do, Jordan, is we're trying to create digestible information for the general public. This interview is an example of that. You know as well as I know that our team at the Strong Youth Project is working hard currently to create content and produce information that can help parents and coaches make better decisions regarding approaches to youth sport. So we've chosen to do that right now digitally primarily. We're creating videos to put on the website. We're going to chop these videos up into smaller pieces and put them on social media. As much as I hate to admit it, social media is a great way to convey information. We're also going to create printed information and try and disseminate that through places like healthcare facilities, schools, community recreation programs. We'll give this printed material to anyone who will take it and try and distribute it. So those are some of the ways that we're trying to communicate scientific information to youth sports stakeholders.
Yeah, we have the website up and going, and Instagram that we're going to start posting these things on, and then we have a Facebook page that we're going to start posting things on as well. And then, like you said, the infographics, just the printed information that we're going to try and get people. And that's how we hope we see those changes in people. And then also, I think one thing that we've talked about doing that is awesome is going to the coaches and saying, okay, this is what we have, and just making sure that they're using it, making sure that it's out there, because we can do all these things, but we want it to be used, and that's what we're really trying to do. So give them
Yeah,
the information and then apply it.
eventually we'd love to create a curriculum of sorts that is applicable to all sports across the board and as many ages as possible. So we'd love to, we want to become a tool for people who care about kids to use for the kids' benefit in the context of youth athletics.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to sum it up of all of our goals.
Never thought I'd say that we want to become a tool, but we're trying to become a tool here.
A good tool, a tool in the right way. Yeah, I've loved all the things we've talked about. A lot of what we've talked about is the communication and getting research out to people. But another thing that the Strong Youth Project is working on is doing our own research on injury prevention and performance. And then we'll apply that to the website and communicate that to other people. So we just touch on that research that's going on and how it can help and be beneficial to young athletes.
You bet. So I'm a scientist at heart. I didn't want to put the research on the shelf, or I didn't want to put performing scientific research on the shelf in the Strong Youth Project. So in the past 12 months, my students and I have designed 2 rather rudimentary research experiments. We're testing the effects of certain coaching cues on movement patterns. And essentially what we're trying to do is we're testing the idea of giving kids verbal cues and video cues. Can we change the way they move in ways that increase athletic performance and potentially decrease athletic injury? So we're trying to teach these kids to land and jump in ways that will improve performance and reduce injury risk. So those are 2 experiments that are ongoing currently that my undergraduate research assistants and I are conducting. We're now in the process of designing some more sophisticated research that we're going to perform with Intermountain Health. Dr. Anthony Buehler at Intermountain Health, he's orthopedist, sports medicine fellow at Intermountain. He and I are working on a project that we hope can benefit lots and lots of kids. We're going to conduct this experiment through the high schools in Utah. We're hoping to get as many as 60 or 70 high schools involved, where we're going to try and create a prediction model and better understand the cause of some common lower extremity injuries. For example, lateral ankle sprains and anterior cruciate ligament ruptures. We're gonna try and track things like injury history, body mass index, training volume, movement patterns, that is like biomechanics, knee angles and forces associated with movement. We're going to try and track a whole bunch of kids in an attempt to create a prediction model. And we're going to try and predict lower extremity injury in high school athletes here in Utah. So right now we're doing some pretty rudimentary research just to get this thing started. And we're already in the works of designing a more sophisticated study that could really be impactful if it works out.
That was perfect. And I think,
is that clear?
Yeah, that was completely clear. And I think why we're doing that, we want kids to be playing sports, and we want them not just to play sports, but we want them to play sports so that they can be physically active, so they can be healthy, and then it can be something that they do for the rest of their life. Maybe not competitively, but staying active, running, resistance training, and eating healthy, and all of those things that keep them healthy for the rest of their life. And if they have a career or a season-ending injury, that can be a lot of reason that kids quit sports. And once they quit, it's hard to get back into them and hard to overcome those injuries. And so preventing those injuries, preventing the burnout or the just the psychological portion that comes with injury will keep people more active, I think, in the long run. And I love that about this research and the purpose of it. So
yeah, one of the major problems right now is that kids are dropping out of sport a lot earlier than ever before. Most kids are dropping out of sport early, like even before they get to the age of 13. And there's a lot of reasons for that. The high level competition is causing pressure and anxiety and depression in kids, so they want to get away from that.
the cost, as I said earlier, is limiting a lot of kids from participating in sport. Increased musculoskeletal injury rates are keeping kids out of sport. And so my end goal here is to create, if you ask me what's one goal for the Strong Youth Project, it would be to create physically active adults. And sport is a really nice vehicle for facilitating physical activity. And if you're a kid and you have a terrible experience as an 11-year-old playing Little League baseball, you're less likely to play baseball moving forward, and you're less likely to play softball as an adult, and you're less likely to be physically active as an adult. And well, I can get going on a physical activity soapbox. I'll spare you today, but I'm a big believer in physical activity for kids and adults. So at the end of the day, that's why I'm doing this, is in hopes of creating adults who are more physically active. And now there's a lot of other benefits that come with sport that we could talk about, but physical activity is certainly one.
Yeah, thinking about my own experience in youth sports, I still play basketball with some of my friends from high school on the basketball team. I still go and run routes with some of my friends from the football team. And I'm able to play basketball with new people that I know, because that's just something that I picked up and that I love to do. And it's helped me stay physically active. It gives me the motivation that I need. I think that's a problem that a lot of people that I've seen have in being physically active, and that I've had myself. It's like, oh, well, I'm not playing sports anymore, so why should I be physically active? And I think it's fun. I think if you can help kids and people understand that, or have a fun time playing sports, then they're going to want to do it. They're going to want to be physically active, and that's the key. It just makes people overall healthier and happier, and that's what we're hoping to do with the Strong Youth Project. So
yeah, so if you had a horrible experience playing basketball growing up, Jordan, let's say that you were put on a team, and your coach's number one goal was to win. And so he did everything that was, he did everything with that in mind, winning. And perhaps maybe you were a great player, and so he put a ton of pressure on you, and it caused you to shrink away from basketball. You probably wouldn't be playing basketball. And then on the other end, maybe you were a terrible player, and so in the pursuit of winning, the coach decided he was never going to let you play. So you sat on the bench the whole year. You probably wouldn't be playing basketball today still. So I'm guessing you had a positive experience in your youth.
yeah,
And you're still pretty young, keep in mind. But
that's true.
yeah, I hope to talk to you again in 50 years, and you're still telling me that you're playing basketball with new friends and old friends.
I hope so too. It's funny you mentioned that. I remember my last baseball tournament. I quit baseball when I was in 8th grade. And part of that was because I wanted to play football and basketball more, and just wasn't loving baseball. But I think part of it, we went on my last tournament down to St. George, and there were these kids that came up from California, and they had, you talk about early sports specialization. They had played baseball their entire lives. It was their life. They wanted to go to the MLB. I remember playing with them, and I just was not having fun. I remember I was kind of that kid. I wasn't as good as they were. They had a lot more baseball skills. They were better pitchers. They were better at hitting. Everything they were better at. And so I didn't play as much. I didn't have as much fun, and it kind of put a lot of pressure on me. It was like, well, if I want to play baseball, then I have to start. It just felt overwhelming. I was just kind of thinking, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. And so that's actually what you just talked about, what ran me out of baseball. Luckily, I still had basketball and football that I could play, and that I had friends that played. But I see that happening, and I've kind of felt that pressure, the early sports specialization, not getting enough playing time, not having fun, and all of that kind of coming together was what finally drove me away from it, got me to quit. So
I had a coach a long time ago, one of my favorite people on this planet. He said, I don't care what anyone says, winning is more fun than losing. And his point was well taken. But we could take that point too far as well. And when winning is the ultimate and the only objective, that's going to cause a problem, because most people don't win all the time. Most people don't win their last game, right? I have this conversation with my kids all the time. You're always going to find someone better than you, unless you're Michael Jordan. And we have that debate at my house a lot. But there's always going to be a team that's better than you. So what's the end game here? If it's winning, then you're setting yourself up for disappointment. So, and don't get me wrong, I love to win, but we got to remember that there are a lot of other more important objectives in sport than winning.
Yeah, and making sure that you're having fun while you're winning, I think, is the most important part. So
yeah, it's easier to have fun when you're winning.
That's true. I felt that for sure. It's not fun to lose.
But there are so many lessons in losing. My wife, she's got a weird take on losing, but she I hope my kids never listen to this video, but she loves it when our kids lose. She loves it when they lose because it teaches so many lessons that are really important. In life, you're not going to win all the time, right? You're going to apply for a lot of jobs that you don't get. You're going to take a lot of college classes that you don't get an A in. You're going to engage in a lot of relationships that don't end up the way you want them to. So I think I see sport as a really safe way to lose, a safe place to lose, and learn how to be resilient and learn from defeat and move on and get better and grow.
Yeah, and when winning is the only emphasis, and that's the only number one thing, like you just talked about how it shouldn't be, then that's where the losing isn't as beneficial. I think when you learn how to lose, you build up that resilience that helps you in everything, in college and in life.
A quick story, Jordan. It was probably almost exactly a year ago. I was at a youth soccer game in Orem, Utah here. And my son was playing. It was a hard-fought game. They blew it. They should have won that game, and they lost. And there was a parent sitting not very far from me. I watched this parent pick up a lawn chair and throw it a few feet backward. And she yelled loud enough for everyone to hear, "That's it. I'm done with this team." As if the team losing was affecting her quality of life. It was about her. And I remember, and Kira can tell you, my wife Kira, I said, Kira, I got to do something. That's not cool. That's not what youth sports should be about. And it was at that very moment that I committed to the Strong Youth Project. I didn't know what it was called at that point in time, but I watched that parent, and that parent was making the sport about the parent and not the kid. And the parent was more concerned about winning than growing and developing and learning. And so that particular experience, it just came to mind. That really was the crux for me, at least. That's what started this whole thing.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that, because the emphasis is on the youth, on the athlete. We want them to be active, but that involves a coach and a parent and anyone else involved. And that's who we're not just, we're focusing on the youth of the Strong Youth Project, but there's also information for parents, for coaches, and that's how we can help the youth as well. And so I love that you said that it's for parents, coaches, with an emphasis on youth, and I love that.
Yeah, the youth are the end users here, but you can't I don't think you can benefit youth without first teaching parents and coaches and administrators. And myself, I have a ton to learn about youth sports. So, I mean, I'll show another quick story, Jordan. It was only a few months ago. I maybe shared this in class, but it was a few months ago. I was up to here with the Strong Youth Project, right? That's all I thought about. And I went to a youth basketball game on a weeknight, and my son's team was losing, and I was getting impatient with the losing, and I looked up, and the foul count was 5-1. 5 fouls had been called on my son's team. 1 foul had been called on the opposing team. And Jordan, I yelled at the official as a parent from the stands. I said, "Hey, 5-1, 5-1. Look at the foul count, 5-1." And I'm embarrassed to say, but I was yelling at the official. And then I went from that game for my 15-year-old son to my 7-year-old's basketball game, of which I was coaching. And we played. I had a ringer of a team last year in 7-year-old little hoopsters in Spanish Fork. We won a ton of games, and we randomly were given a bunch of good players. It was sheer luck. And anyway, I coached this game, and I noticed at the end of the game, I had a little guy on my team named Liam. I don't think Liam had touched the ball all night. We won by 100 points that night, but Liam hadn't touched the ball. I walked out to my car. I thought two things. I thought, well, several things. I thought of the Strong Youth Project. I thought I just yelled at an official at a community rec basketball game with 15-year-olds playing. And then I coached a team where one of my players didn't even touch the ball. And I thought, you got to do better than that, Matt. If you're gonna be out preaching this stuff, you got to do better. So, Jordan, when I say we got to teach others, parents, kids, coaches, I'm including myself there. So I still have some room to grow.
We're all included. And one thing that I just thought of, it's the emotions that you want. Parents want the best for their kids, coaches want the best for their athletes, and the winning aspect of it, the competition of it, can sometimes take over, I think. And it's just remembering the most important parts of it, and that's why we have this. That's what we're doing it for.
Yeah.
And just one last question: if you could have parents, coaches, and athletes learn one thing from the Strong Youth Project, what would it be?
I think I want kids to become physically active adults. So that would be one thing that I'd want the kids and the parents to learn, is that one tremendous value for all society in sport is the emphasis on physical activity. And I can't say enough about the value of physical activity. We have a mantra here in my department that exercise is medicine. Exercise is the closest thing we have to a panacea in our society today, in my exercise biased mind. If we could have more people exercising more frequently, we could solve a lot of societal problems, in my opinion. So I want people to remember that one of the purposes of sport is to promote physical activity. And we can't do that if we're creating obstacles for kids that cause them to drop out of sport prematurely. So when I was growing up 100 years ago, most kids were playing most sports, right? We would rotate from football to basketball to baseball to soccer, whatever was in season, that's what we were playing. And a lot of kids were doing that. Today, it's just a few kids playing a few sports for a lot of really complex reasons, but I think we need to do better. We can do better, and we have to do better in getting more kids out on the field more frequently, and creating an environment where they can enjoy themselves and learn some lessons along the way. So that's the short answer, Jordan, but I can't resist saying, like, kids play sports. The number one reason, Jordan, you know what the number one reason is kids play sports if you look at the data?
I'm not sure.
Giving you, what would you guess? Why did you play sports?
I played sports because I was fun, and I actually looked before this as well that one of the number one reasons that the parents have their kids in sports is so that their kids will have fun.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, that's a good reason. The number one reason is kids play sports to be with their friends, right? Which allows them to have fun. So I don't even know where I was going with that, Jordan, but I guess I was talking about creating circumstances for kids to have fun, and you got to get them with their friends, and you got to let them play with their friends. And I mean, I know of situations right now where kids have went and, they go play with a different team because they think it'll help improve their skill level. Well, they just left all their old friends behind on the old team. You think that kid's having more fun on the new team? Probably not. You think that kid is more likely to stick with that sport? Probably not. So going back to where I started with this whole friend idea is we got to create an environment that gives the kid the best chance to have fun, enjoy themselves, stick with the sport, and learn all the lessons that come from sport, including the importance of physical activity.
Yeah, I think that's great. Just the overall emphasis on physical activity for youth and for lifelong physical activity is what we're going for. So if we can cut down on the bad things that we've talked about that we've seen in youth sports, one being how expensive they are, that will drag kids away and parents away as well. If we can cut down on the early sport specialization, and get rid of that burnout that kids are experiencing when they quit too early and then they aren't physically active. And then if we can get rid of the poor sportsmanship, not just from parents and coaches and from all three, from athletes, parents, and coaches. When I was playing youth sports, I remember when a parent would yell or a coach would yell at the official, or it just got ugly really quick, and it made me not want to be there. It made me not want to play the youth sport. It made me just want to run away from it. And we can't have that for kids that want to stay healthy and active for the rest of their lives. If that's their experience from youth sports, they're going to run. They're not going to want to be a part of it. And so I love that, getting rid of that and making sure that everyone knows proper sport etiquette. And then the research that's been done to show scientific backed information on how we can reach the goals of having fun and having fun for the youth and creating physically active adults.
Yeah, I think you summarized it really nicely, Jordan. So
yeah. So
I
thank you,
appreciate you.
Dr. Seeley.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think you can all see that we have nobody better to lead the Strong Youth Project than Dr. Seeley, with all of his experience and the passion that he has about the youth sports. So we're grateful to have him at the Strong Youth Project. So
thanks, Jordan. I appreciate your time today.
yeah, thank you.